Everyone. Thanks for joining us again for webinar number 9 on the player, the coach, the person. I hope you're all keeping well out there. Tonight we're very lucky to have a man who's, up until last night, actually never spoken to, never met, but his reputation precedes him, not only obviously for the wonderful things he's done in football, but also, I mean, I don't think there's not many people within football that when you speak of or hear of, that every single person has a good word to say about them and says what a top guy, as well as obviously a top person at their job. So really pleased to have Dave Parnaby on this evening. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Paul.
How are you? Also, lucky to have a protege of yours, Dave, on this evening with Paul Collins, who's our technical director of the It's Just Football Youth Academy out here. Obviously joined us out from Middlesborough. We managed to poach him out here, and we're very lucky to have him, who obviously heads up our youth academy.
Evening, everyone. Thanks for having me, Chris. Looking forward to it. Evening, Dave.
Evening, Paul.
We'll get straight into it then, Dave. And what we do like to do at the start of each webinar is really just to find out how people have been so successful in what they've done, and really find out where they've kind of come from and their journey, as you say, to get to where they've come from. So how did you firstly get into coaching, please?
I suppose it goes right back to your childhood. I was no different to probably everyone that's zoomed in tonight. I wanted to be a professional sportsman. And if it was football, I was quite good at cricket as well, but I was really keen to be a professional sportsman. Unfortunately, I was never quite good enough. I've got 2 lovely letters at home, one from Harold Shepherdson, who was Alf Ramsey's assistant, and another one from a guy called Wally Gould at Stoke, saying thanks but no thanks. And I've got the Harold Shepherdson one in private place. But I just fell short, and I was sort of a late developer as well. I was offered my first professional contract when I was 25. I'd started teaching because I took the teaching route. Once I knew professional sport wasn't an option, I went down the physical education route. I started playing non-league football. And along came Rotherham United, of all clubs, under the stewardship of Ian Porterfield, who scored the very famous goal in 1973 for Sunderland. And he was manager at the time. I played for the reserves and scored 2 goals. And I got a phone call on the Monday asking me to go and join them. And of course, my question was, for how long? And Ian said, well, I can only offer you 1 year. And I actually declined. My wife, Jane, wanted me to do it, but declined. I just started a good job, bought a house. Jane was pregnant. So I turned it down. Never regretted it. So I went down the physical education route, non-league, played in the conference, most of my playing time with Gateshead. Came out of the playing side at Gateshead, went to the coaching side, if you could call it coaching, and the management side, which was a real good life experience. I think the only thing I didn't do at Gateshead was drive the bus, but there you go. But that came to an end. It was a full-time job in the end because we got promoted we'd gone down to the Northern Premier League and came back with very little money. And it was in November of that year. And I just said to Jim Pearson, who was my assistant, that if we lose today, then I'm going to resign. So we lost 1-0 at home to Yeovil, and I resigned after the game. And it was at that time a young man who he may be watching tonight, I'm not sure, but Mark Tinkler was actually at the school I joined. So I started teaching at Spennymoor School. Mark was arguably the best player in the country at that time. I mean that. But he was also playing for Durham County Boys. And I went to watch him with his dad, Ronnie, one night, and Malcolm Burry asked me, the chief executive of English Schools FA, he asked me if I would like to get involved with the national coaching programme, because the international programme was under the umbrella of English Schools FA. so I got involved through that. Became an area coach, regional coach. I had 3 lovely years as assistant manager to John Owens. John Owens was academy manager at Liverpool, those who can remember. And those who went through the first round of audits with Footpath, John was actually an auditor for Footpath. Great mentor of mine, great coach. So I was assistant to John with English schools up there. And it was there I embarked on sort of the coaching pathway, A licence, and then the tenure for assistant was 3 years. And in 1997-98, I took up the manager's role of the national team, which included Jermaine Defoe, my own son Stuart, Peter Clark, and a few others. So I became manager, but while I was doing that, English football was in a state of flux and it was in a state of change. And Howard Wilkinson created the Charter for Quality. And I knew that I was going to be a consequence of change. I knew that my 3 years was going to be cut short because it was the Football Association's intention to take over the national team. So all international development was going to be under the umbrella of the Football Association. So I only had 1 year at the national team job, but it was a great experience, great time. Learned so much. And so 1998 came around, and Sunderland were the first club that came calling and asked if I would be prepared to leave teaching and join them under this new Charter for Quality as a head of education and welfare. Sadly, that didn't materialise. And then I was very, very happy teaching. I'd moved into middle management in teaching. And Newcastle came then. Alan Irvine invited me down to Newcastle. I sat with Kenny Dalglish and Terry McDermott and Alan himself, who's a fantastic coach, fantastic person. And I think if they'd offered me the job there and then, I would have took it. I was so in awe of Kenny Dalglish. Super bloke. And I liked what he said. But anyway, Kenny was sacked 2 weeks later, so that never materialised either. So back to teaching again, which I really enjoyed. I was involved in the county groups, the district groups, and then Middlesbrough came along. Ron Bourne, who I was so lucky to work with for all my time at Middlesbrough. Ron Bourne rang me and said, would you like to come down to the stadium and have a chat with Keith Lamb and Steve Gibson? So off I went and just had a general chat. Being in the position I was as England manager, I was really, really in touch with the Charter for Quality. I knew what was coming, and I knew it was the best blueprint for the development of the English game, and I really agreed with it. So I had no qualms about it. And I think they were quite taken about how much I knew about the Charter for Quality. First chat was with Keith. Second chat was with Keith and Steve. And then the last day of term, 1998, Keith invited me to meet him at lunchtime at Hardwick Hall. So I went out at lunchtime, met Keith, shook hands, and as they say, the rest is history. I was with Middlesbrough from the September of that year. And obviously, I had a great time at Middlesbrough. It wasn't easy. It was very, very difficult when I joined. Relationships weren't as they should be, in my opinion, within the department. Nobody knew what academies looked like. All I had was a Premier League rule book and my own thoughts on how everything should be done. And then I introduced job descriptions, terms and conditions of employment. Really new to me. So it was a real out of the comfort zone and lots of sleepless nights. So the first 18 months was turmoil for myself. Lots of sleepless nights, lots of questioning myself about whether I made the right decision. But as time goes on, and with the help of great people like Ron and Wendy Thomas, who was the academy administrator, we got through that. And we developed a program that we thought was really simple, all about the kids, all about individuals. Didn't do a lot of team play. Unfortunately, touch wood, with a lot of good luck, good fortune, good people, good staff, we started to produce players. But I read the description you put on, Chris, at the start about mastermind. It wasn't my mastermind. It was a great team effort. Lots and lots of people involved in the whole process. The parents, the kids, the education, administration, recruitment, they all play their part. And while that was going on, academy manager's license, if we're talking about qualifications, we were the instigators of the award. We were the first cohort through. 2004 was a review of the charter. Doug Ellis and Robert Core reviewed it. And overnight, from being an academy director, I became academy manager. Mr. Ellis thought the title was misleading for lots and lots of club chairmen. And in 2004, the games programme changed from under 17, under 19 to under 18 for no football reasons. It was purely finance. Instead of having 2 youth teams, they wanted to reduce it to 1 to cut the costs. And that was, again, Mr. Ellis and Mr. Core. 2008, we were, as a club, we were involved in Europe. So we had to have UEFA qualifications among the staff. Steve McLaren had left. We didn't have a pro licence holder, so I was asked by the chief exec if I wouldn't mind going on the pro licence. So 2008, 2006 we started and graduated 2008, the pro licence, which is another really out of the comfort zone. Great course, great tutors, and a great experience. It was really good.
Was that Les Reed who put that together?
No, that was the pro licence. John Peacock led the course. Yeah. He was the course coordinator. And then in 2012, the whole world shook, and along came the Elite Player Performance Plan, which was a shock to the system, to say the least. Once again, out of the comfort zone, a new language, a new way of looking at things, a very measured way of looking at things, which I wasn't a scientist. I was more on gut and heart and instinct and experience. But once again, Middlesbrough, with the support of the chief exec and the chairman, said that we wanted to be in there with the best, and supported us on becoming a Category 1 academy. And then 2015-16 came along EHOC, ECAS. I got involved with all that, with the Premier League. I became a master coach with Mark Tinkler, Paul Crazier. And then, but I knew what was coming. I was 63 coming up in 2017, and decided that it's about time I spent some time for myself and my family. So 2017 came along, and I decided to retire. Some might say too early, but I knew it wasn't. And but continuity was the thing. Craig's gone in, and I think it's continued just to move along with the times and change with the staff, etc. But there's still a good cohort of academy players in the first team. So really, really, in a nutshell, that was my journey. I was very honoured to be awarded by the FA for services to the game, to the coaching and development, and the Premier League. The Premier League, Eamon Dolan, God bless him, no longer here. They had the Eamon Dolan Award for development and coaching. They awarded me with that, the first ever. And then probably the highest honour, it's Dr. David Parnaby. I was honoured, honorary doctorate by Teesside University, which was fantastic, really, really humbling. And but that was really nice as well. So very, very lucky to find Middlesbrough, very lucky to find Steve Gibson, and very lucky to have the staff that I had throughout my time there. So in a nutshell, Chris, that's my journey.
Brilliant. And I mean, Paul's going to ask now. I think you wanted to ask Paul around what it actually looked like, the club when you first went. I know you talked about there, just having to write job descriptions or whatever. But what a youth department looked like at that time when you took over, in comparison to what it is now.
Yeah, Steve Gibson and Keith Lamb had done some groundwork along with the help of Ron. I think Ron was the key person in informing them what was required. At the time, they thought that, we're talking about heads of coaching these days, but Steve had moved already, and it was mainly due to Bryan Robson's demands on he wanted Gordon McQueen, who was reserve team manager, to be first team coach, which meant John Pickering became part of the academy coaching group, who was a fantastic man, fantastic coach. But the structure that they tried to put into place before I arrived, before the onset of the academies, just didn't fit. So with as I said, the rule book from the Premier League gave you the basic requirements of what an academy should look like and which roles should be fulfilled. So one or two people welcomed the change and welcomed the role I put them into. Again, it was looking at the personality, looking at the strengths, and looking at what they could bring to the organisation. So some reorganisation of roles. As I say, some people enjoyed the change. Some people were quite often knocking on my door, and some nice conversations, and I've got to say heated conversations now and again. But as I say, we worked our way through that. And at the time it was under 17s and the 19s, so we had an under 17 coach and a 19 coach. We had an overall professional sort of development phase sort of lead. And then the 9s to 16s was a block. Relationships was the key. And that was difficult to work with. By luck, good fortune, natural sort of happenings, people moved on to other clubs or clubs they wanted to be with, and that gave me the scope to organise the way I thought it would be best organised for Middlesbrough Football Club, and all the way through that. And if you're asking me later on about secrets, number one in any organisation is you've got to have total support and a clear, precise message coming from the top. As I said, I was so lucky to get Steve Gibson as the leader of all that. Our message, our sort of mission statement was for the academy to be an environment where talent can flourish, but mainly aimed at Teesside and surrounding areas. So it was very much localised, which the Charter for Quality was. If you remember, the travelling distance was an hour for the little ones, an hour and a half for the 14s upwards. So it was very much concentrating on giving Teesside people and Durham, Chester Street, North Yorkshire an opportunity to come into the professional game. So yeah, that was the challenges we had. Yeah,
within those challenges, Dave. I mean, obviously you look at the youth academy departments these days, and they're huge, really, aren't they? With the auxiliary, the performance and analysts, and I mean, did you embrace that at the time, or did you, you're obviously the love of coaching? Was it you were more focused on the coaching, or did you pull in these?
I was a teacher, Chris, and a coach, so I was a far better coach and teacher than I was a manager. So again, stepping out the comfort zone into the management role was new. It was nerve-wracking. It was exciting. All those things. So I think in most environments, coaching took the forefront, and it was all about the coach. I don't think it's like that now. I think it's a multidisciplinary approach. When the elite player performance plan came in, Paul will tell you, I was a little bit reluctant. Paul was a recruit for that, because the structure we put into place for the Elite Player Performance Plan included, meant we had to recruit more staff. People like Paul came in. The Elite Player Performance Plan came along, but do we need it? I was asking myself. We're producing players, things are going along nicely. We've got some nice sound technical guidelines. We've got a balanced input from sports science, etc. So a little bit of reluctance from myself to start with, but lots and lots of good has come out of the Elite Player Performance Plan. And I think the young, talented players that we have in England, they're second to none now. I think there's some fantastic talents up and down the country. So is that because of the Elite Player Performance Plan? Not solely. I think it's a mixture of everything, and it's a 25-year development that's gone on, and changes and adjusting. But the advancements in sports science, the physical development of the children that we're dealing with, so good. And I meet with a few coaches as a mentor, and I always say to them, in the modern day, you've got to be working hand in hand with the physical department, because at the elite end, the physical development is so important. The speed of the game now is unbelievable. Yeah.
Was that one of your biggest challenges then, Dave? Obviously, we go back to when you first came in, and you said you almost had a blank canvas to kind of implement and draw up a program. And obviously, there's no question that it worked in terms of producing players. And obviously, you've already alluded to it. I was fortunate enough to be to benefit from the EPPP and the demand for more staff. But do you think there's in sort of a balance as well? Obviously, go back to when you first started versus the amount of staff that's in the game now. I mean, even just at my time at the Borough, it seemed every time we had a multidisciplinary meeting, it was harder and harder to get a chair in your office. There was more stuff all the time. So was that one of the biggest challenges as well? It's obviously, taking you away from the grass.
It grew and grew and grew. It might still be growing, I don't know. But the departments within the academy seem to just grow beyond belief. And but I hope all for the good. I mean, great for the employment within the game, more people, more jobs. Yeah. But it's big best. I just feel as though we've maybe gone a little bit too far. Multidisciplinary meetings. I think we developed, certainly by the time I left, I think we got them into a reasonable state and reasonable communication between all departments. One of the other things I would say about Secrets is good communication at all levels. And I think from departmental meetings, which led into academy management team meetings, which led into technical board meetings, and then from the technical board to the actual board of the club with Steve Gibson. So the chain of reference was very clear. Obviously, the departmental meetings were led by the departmental heads. I led the academy management team meeting, and that was refined as we went along. We chopped, we changed what worked, what didn't work, but I was keen to make sure that every single member of staff felt valued and had an input. So the departmental meetings meant that part-time coaches, as an example, had some kind of input into the development program. And then the heads of coaching brought that to the table in the academy management team meetings, where each department got their input into we used to have them monthly. So each month, each department would speak about what they've been doing, but also looked at ideas for moving forward. And then the technical board, when the EPPP first came around, it was all singing, all dancing, the technical board meeting. But as time developed, the technical board became more of a forum to discuss player pathways, and especially those at under 18, under 23s. What was the next move? What was the next contract? How we're going to manage it? And what we developed as a result of that was, before the technical board meetings, we'd always have player audit meetings. Which players have we got? Colour coded, traffic lighted. And then we'd go to the technical board meeting with the head of recruitment, chief exec, the manager of the club, myself, under 23 coach. And we'd discuss with the talents that we had at our disposal and what would be the best pathway for those players. So from starting to talk about everything within the club, which the chief exec put an end to, he said, no, we're not, that's not necessary really. And so we moved into talking about player pathways. And I think we're talking about things coming out of EPPP. I think player audit meetings were really, really good by the time we left. We had a very, very clear picture of which kids were the talents, which kids needed more support, which kids needed exit routes. And that was right the way through. And I think certainly Martin Carter's took it on since I left. And the player audits are very, very important in part of the whole process.
Yeah. When you, obviously the success of the players that have come through, and when you hear, we talk to people in football at different Cat 1 academies, sometimes you get, they sound very similar in terms of what they're all doing. So, the audit process, and it's all very, very regimented, it's quantified, it's, how do you become like a differentiator in that? How do you set yourself apart from being a top academy to aside from resources? The biggest clubs are always going to obviously have the financial power, but how do you do what you've done at Middlesbrough as opposed to some other clubs who've got bigger?
So it's a great question, Chris, and I'm not quite sure how to answer it, but I think in the back of my mind that there's a saying that people say simplicity is genius, and we try to keep it very, very simple, very straightforward, and try to keep the kids at the forefront of everything. So whatever we were dealing with, you mentioned audits there, and we had to devise, construct an academy performance plan based around the audit process. So I'll hold my hands up. Some of the audit language was a foreign language, very scientific language for me. But in an attempt to become a Category 1, we took the audit tool as our APP, Academy Performance Plan. And so being the club and the status we were at the time, we tried to score as many points as we possibly could in as many categories as we could. Rightly, wrongly, you can argue whether that was a right policy or not. But underneath it all, the auditors, our visitors, and nothing gave me greater pride when someone came to visit and said, "This feels like a great place to work." And when you get that feedback from visitors who you respect within the game, and your own staff, that gave me a great deal of satisfaction. Was it perfect? A million miles away from being perfect. Was it good to be around the people we had? Very much so. Did we have talented kids? Yes, because we had a really good recruitment department. Did we have good coaches? I would say did we have the best coaches in the country? Probably not. But they genuinely cared about the kids. They genuinely cared about what we were doing. They would go that extra mile for you. That extra mile, the time didn't matter. They sacrificed life and work balance. They went more for the work balance if you required that. And I think within all that is your ability as a manager to trust the people you've given the roles to. And with trust becomes responsibility. So people like Paul was given responsibility as a lead coach. the structure that I put into place was my own. I didn't believe that, I still don't believe that one person can be a head of coach across under 9s to under 23s. So my thinking on, in the rule book at the time, there was a slot there for the head of coach development. I didn't think that was particularly right. So I came up with the professional development phase, under 23s, under 18 lead coaches. I thought that was the real sharp end of things once they got to that stage. And then we had under 15, under 16 lead, under 13, under 14 lead, under 11, under 12 lead, and under 9, under 10 lead. I asked the Premier League, when the head of coaching funding came around, if they would just give me the money and I could slice it up and give it to the people who were fulfilling those roles in my structure, but they wouldn't have that. So we went down that road, and Craig Little was our first head of coaching, who is now the academy manager, and I think Phil Shedd's now the current head of coaching. I meet with Phil, and I say to him quite openly that I still don't believe that the head of coaching description is quite right yet. Maybe, in my opinion, maybe should have been an academy coach developer. Because there's lots and lots of things being thrown at the head of coaching at them. But there you go, I'm waffling on a bit now.
That's great.
I think just on the relationships one then, Dave, I mean, unquestionably, and obviously I can lay testament to that, in terms of the environment that you created and the way you manage staff, and the way obviously we got on with each other as well. I think, you know, the environment around the academy was brilliant, but I just wanted to get an insight around how you managed up in your relationships with like the hierarchy at the club. You know, and was ever a time where you might have, you know, had a difference of opinion? Was there ever sort of a time where there was players where you felt as though they were deserving of an opportunity? Or flip side of that, was there any sort of managers there where you know, invested a lot of time, took a real keen interest into the youth system and you know, to learn what you were doing and all the good work that you'd done?
Yeah, I've the last point on the presentation I did, the ability to manage up with. And that doesn't apply to me. I think that applies to every single person within any organisation. So the coaches that work under you, Paul, I would encourage them, well, how do you manage? How do you speak? How do you communicate with Paul Collins? With me being in the position I was in, my direct point of reference was Keith Lamb, first and foremost. He was my first chief exec. And then Neil Bowser came along. And then obviously with Steve, we hardly ever saw Steve. We always knew what was going on, and every now and again I'd get a call, just a chat or a visit to the stadium. But it was Keith and Neil that were my point of reference. In terms of management, I always, even when this Charter for Quality was initiated, our role as an academy is to support. We support the club, we support the first team. And the more people we can get through to helping them, that was our role. So my first challenge was Bryan Robson. I'd played with Brian's brother Justin at Gateshead. I'd been to Justin's wedding, so I'd met Brian in a sort of loose way. Brian wasn't a coach at all. So the training was different to what you'd see now, I would say. And it was Brian's ability to recruit players. You know as well as anybody, Paul, being a Borough daft man, that he had coming off being the best player in the world, he had this ability and respect across the game, plus the resource that Steve gave him to bring the best players in the world to the club. And so training wasn't complex at all. But what I used to say to the kids, if Bryan Robson speaks to you on the pitch or in training or whatever, just make sure your ears are wide open and take in all the advice you can give. because he'd been there, done it. Best player in the world, in my opinion, in lots of other people's opinion as well. But didn't see himself as a coach. So I respected that. And the thing with, I heard John McDermott's talk the other day to a group of coaches, and John spoke about credibility. And going back to those early days, Chris, when relationships weren't great, I'm sure some of them were saying, "Who the hell is Dave Parnaby? Where's he coming from?" Because at the top end of the club, we had Bryan Robson, Viv Anderson, Gordon McQueen, Dave Geddes, Ray Train. Who the hell's Dave Parnaby? So for a while, we never saw Bryan at an academy game or training. But unfortunately, John Pickering, sadly, passed away now. John was diagnosed with cancer, and I had to come out of the office and pick up the reins to coach the under-17s. And Bryan knew this particular Saturday morning we were playing this little club called Manchester United, and they were coming along, and all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but I got a sniff that Bryan would be at the game. I was coaching the team, and Bryan came along and stood next to me, right next to me in the technical area. Viv was about 20 yards further down, and Gordon stood somewhere else. All Man United ingrained, and they always spoke about Fergie and how they did things, Eric Harrison, etc., etc., etc. So they came and stood there, and I knew we had a good group. We had a real talented bunch of kids, and we just happened to beat them 6-1 that morning. Stewie Downing crossed 3 times, and a young lad called Jamie Cade scored 3 from Stewart's crosses. And I just got a sense that the whole academy that morning was credible in Bryan's eyes. He saw that we had some talent, and so communication was better, and I was able to talk about players. Who's that? Who's this? That. Now, as I say, we were there to support. So Bryan I used to ask, "Who's the next one? Who's the next one?" And then Bryan came to the end of his reign, and for a short time we worked with Terry Venables, and really Terry was an absolute gem. His man management skills, his way to communicate with everyone at every level of the club. A football fanatic. He's first one in, last one away every night. And for a short time, we had the pleasure of seeing Terry in action and Terry on the coaching field, which was a real education for everyone. So Bryan, Terry had moved on, and I was on holiday in Tenerife, and got the phone call came to say that Bryan's gone, Dave, and that was the first day. Second day, Gordon McQueen's gone, Dave. Third day, Viv Anderson's gone, Dave. And the fourth day, David Geddes was gone, which is the reserve team manager, and he said, "Enjoy your holiday, Dave." So I was waiting for the next phone call, but didn't come. But when I returned to work, Karen Nelson saw me and said, "Bill Beswick wants to see you." And Bill came in as Steve McLaren's assistant. And his title was manager's assistant, not assistant manager, the manager's assistant. Bill using his psych background. Went upstairs, met Bill, met Steve for the first time. "We want your office, Dave. You're going to have to move your office. You're going to have to move all your staff out of the big office." "Yeah, fine, no problem. No problem." So we all jigged around, and I moved one down the corridor, etc., etc. But the big thing is that the training ground changed. The dynamics, the layout, training grids appeared, different sizes, different shapes. Lines appeared on thirds of the pitch. Coaching was prominent. Steve was, with the help of Bill, was very modern, very American. Goalkeeping coach, defensive coach, midfield coach, striker coach. And then you had him as the coach coordinator with 2 balls under his arm on a Thursday, doing 11v11 in preparation for games. So we certainly did become a coaching club. Steve Round was a great link between the first team. And once again, Bill, using his psych, Steve became the second team manager, not the reserve team manager, the second team manager. But he had experience of development at Derby, very good coach. And we had a lot of success going through Steve's development program. Steve Round and Mark Proctor, myself, had a good communication channels. And obviously, great success under Steve as far as academy players are concerned, but also the Carling Cup, the visit to the final of the UEFA Cup in Eindhoven. And then obviously Steve's profile went through the roof. England came calling. We're talking about managing upwards, and that on occasions was challenging. Up until Steve arrived, I did everything with players' contracts. I did scholarships, I did professional contract offers. I dealt with the parents, I dealt with the agents. I'm not going into too much detail about the incident, but there was an incident involving agents, which created I suppose an opportunity really, rather than a conflict, where we discussed what was the role of the academy manager. Should he really be doing players' contracts, etc.? Which was music to my ears, because from that point onwards, it was a club decision that the chief exec dealt with all professional contracts. I dealt with scholarships, and it's been like that ever since. So it was a good thing for me, really, that came out of it. And again, that management upwards, and you're talking about. I proposed 5 professional contracts one particular year, and Steve said they'll never play for me. They all did, and they all went on to have really, really good careers. So, and that wasn't just my decision; it was an academy decision. So again, examples of moving up, managing up, and you've got to be tactful. You've got to make sure that you're protecting your own staff. You're not alienating your staff. You're not alienating the academy away from the first team. Steve moved out, and then 2 weeks after being captain at Eindhoven, Gareth Southgate moved in. Gareth was inexperienced. Put a lot of trust in ourselves. We took Gareth through level 2, level 3, level 4 coaching awards in a space of 2 years. He'll admit himself he wasn't ready. Recreated himself, and look at him now. He's respected throughout the world. So that was it. That was an interesting period. And then we go Gordon Strachan come down, and then for all the coach, I mean, Paul might say back me, but on the field, Gordon was a great coach. Great, in my opinion, great on the field coach. His experiences of life and his own development program was key to how he thought. Tough upbringing, tough coaches who coached him, and I think Gordon believed that that's how life should be for everyone. Unfortunately, in the modern world, you can't always be like that. But a great coach, and very supportive of me, and I'll always be thankful for Gordon for. Again, when we're moving, and we had an idea at the time that late birthdays was a good thing, and people like Ben Gibson was one of them, Luke Williams, who was a real talent. They were sort of late birthdays, and we put a proposal forward that we should look after these lads' futures. And there's about 5 or 6 went through that process, and again, all went on to reasonable, successful career. And then the return of Tony Mowbray, who's the best football man I've ever met in my life. And Tony just used to knock on my door, and he used to sit and we used to talk footy. It was constant with Tony. Real breath of fresh air, and had some wonderful ideas about how to play the game. He was our manager in the first audit. So in the first audit, the auditors wanted to see myself and the manager together to see how it all linked up, the academy development programme and the seniors, managing upwards, communication, etc. They asked Tony one question, and they were still listening to the answer an hour later. So he which was the best compliment he could have paid to us. He said that he did believe to the auditors. He said, "I do believe it's a good marriage, the academy and the first team." So lots of support. Great man, great person, great football man, really, really good coach. In my opinion, didn't coach enough. He left it to other people to coach, but real knowledgeable, thoughtful, clever, innovative coach. Really, really good. And then Aitor Karanka came in. Again, out of the comfort zone again. Our first in-service that year was me interviewing Aitor Karanka in front of all the coaches in the dining room upstairs. And that in itself.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that day. That was good. In
terms of detail and attention to detail in preparation for games, I'd never seen anything like it, and I'd never experienced anything like it. His staff were constantly under pressure to produce maybe an 8-9 page document per game for the players. Everyone was hard at it. The training ground became a real serious environment. I always remember one morning going out and standing watching. I used to love watching. And it was carousel coaching. You went from one station to the next station, but they were all linked and all related to the next game. And shooting practice or a shooting drill, shall I say. And one or two players decided to smile, laugh when someone else missed the goal with the shooting practice. And Mr. Karanka would not have that. He just brought everybody in, dressed them all down, and he really tore a strip of them, everyone. And from then on, shooting practice was a lot better. Everyone got a lot more out of it. Pretty strict. It came at a very, very unfortunate end with Aitor. Relationships, communication breakdown. And that's why communication is so important. Egos came into it. So that was an unfortunate end, but again, I'd rather concentrate on what he brought. And he brought that attention to detail was so important at the sharp end of the game, at first team level. And at that point, I was planning my escape. So after that, Steve Agnew came in. Steve started his career with us, under 12s. And now first team coach at Newcastle with Steve Bruce. Great on the coaching field. Thinking all the time about how to improve, and really, really good with individual play development. And if there's another thing that came out of EPPP that I really think is the way forward, is individual learning plans and individual play development. I'm sure that was going on before, but EPP just allow you to box it all off. And so Paul Collins as the centre forward in the 14s had some purpose in a learning plan and a development plan, as an example. Yeah. But that's again, I'm waffling on, Paul, but that was my sort of in a nutshell. There was lots more to it, but that's my sort of managing upwards in a nutshell.
Paul? What's talking about managing upwards? What was Dave like to work for then?
The leader.
You be careful.
Bearing in mind, a different country.
Hell of a night at Rockcliffe. Nah, listen, seriously, it was fantastic. You know, it was, you know, giving me an opportunity to work for the club that I love, but it was an education in sort of every sense of the word, really. You know, there's loads of occasions, and I'm sure there's plenty of people watching now. We've got so many stories and all positive ones just to say about Dave. I remember when I first started with the 16s, and we went to Man City. And I wasn't long into the job really, in the full-time role, and we got beat 10-0. And I was like, oh Jesus, yeah, how's this going to go down? And I mean, I have to admit, it was Sancho and Foden and co, so it made me feel a little bit better a few years later when I started emerging in the field. I was not recognise them, but no, I was like, how's this going to go down with Dave? And it was just, you know, it was just, the reaction was just, it made you at ease. It was never ever about the result. It was all about the players. It was all about the development, and the way you spoke, to not just to me but to everyone, and you go back to that, the environment and the communication. It was top, and it was just, yeah, just learned so much, and you just felt as though you always had your back as well. I remember, you know, hands down the worst part of the role when you get to that age, and it's, you know, you're talking about giving people scholarships or not. I mean, obviously those conversations get harder as you get older, I guess, but. Yeah, hands down the worst part of my role, and you just felt as though you always had your back. I remember one time, it was probably one of the first conversations I had to have with a parent, a very difficult one, I must say, and it, you know, it kind of stood me in good stead going forward. But I always remember, like you say, the parent then wanted to speak to Dave, and he just had your back, you know, and you just felt as though, you know, you belong here, and it gave you the confidence then to go and drive on, yeah. And like I say, it was great. The environment that we had, the camaraderie we had with the staff, everyone, and like I say, even Dave has mentioned a few already, and not just the coaches, but everyone. Wendy, you know, everyone was brilliant. It was a real good time to be at the club, and obviously a large part of that was down to Dave and the way he manages staff. So,
yeah. Underneath all that, Chris, I think everybody listening, we had the John Wooden pyramid, the pyramid of success. The Bill Bezzy found that for me, but we used that, the bottom layer, and the two cornerstones is hard work and enthusiasm. Was it as easy as Paul described? No, it was tough. And coach, I always remember doing my A licence and Colin Murphy standing up, and he was the director of the course, and he said, "Gentlemen," he says, "coaching is very, very difficult." He says, "So with that in mind, if anybody wants to leave now, you're more than welcome." And he's right. Coaching is so complex and so difficult. And there's something, I said this at the Advanced Youth Award, there's something quite spiritual about coaching. When you're in there and you're on the field and you're with the kids and the players, there's something inside that tells you it's going well. Something inside you tells you the kids are responding. Something inside you tells you that this is going to stick. Some of this is going to stick with these kids. And teaching and coaching is very, very special. I always remember when I first started teaching, you know, Keith Robson, who was my head of department, he taught me how to teach. He taught me about organisation, discipline, being thorough, and attention to detail again, all those things. But it's tough, and you've got to stick with it, and you've got to be durable, and you've got to be part of a team. You can't have an ego. You can't go off on a crusade on your own within the academy. You've got to stick to what everyone believes and defend it to the hilt. We created core values of humility, respect, and honesty. And I honestly say to this day that I think, looking back, we lived those core values. We stuck together. We looked after each other. We stood by our principles. We stood what we believed in. Sometimes, like managing upwards again, Paul, contracts with players. And the chairman wanting to play a king's ransom to make sure we signed someone, or they signed a contract to stay at the club. I had many conversations with Steve. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Stick with what we're doing. Let's have the pay scale and the levels of payment. kept at a reasonable amount until a later date. Those type of questions. But again, going back, it sounds as though the environment was like happy go. It was a really, really good place to be. But underneath all that, some fantastic work and fantastic knowledge, experience, humbleness, people willing to ask for help, people never afraid to go and help one another. That's the type of attitude I try to instill. Did it work all the time? No, it didn't. It fell apart sometimes. And then you have to gather up the scraps and put it back together again.
With that, then, Dave, I mean, recruitment, and I'm talking, we'll talk players in a moment, but more around recruitment of staff. I mean, how did you go about getting those types of people in? Because the qualities that, obviously there's the coach.
Again, being the person I am, Chris, I think I'd go on instinct and gut.
Yeah.
Paul was an example. Went through a whole process and interviews and things, but you just simply get a feel. And again, did I get it all right? Probably not. And I think one big thing that changed in the whole 20 years I was there, then HR became more prominent. Employment law. You had to double check everything by the time I'd retired. Anything to do with recruitment of staff or interviews or anything, because of the modern world, as it were, and how it's changed, we had to go make sure that we were doing everything by the book, and the process was absolutely 100% right. But good people first, and then we could help them. I also had a really, really big thing about being a borough lad, being connected with the borough.
Yeah.
Mark Proctor, Stephen Pears, Paul Collins, Colin Cooper, Curtis Fleming, Craig Hignett. Goes on, I can name many who. And then we've also had people like Paul Crager, people like who's a lead coach now he's assistant coach at 23s. Phil Shedd, gone all the way through from under 9s, under 9-10 lead, under 16 lead, and now he's head of coaching. So he knows this. He knows the process. He knows the system. Craig Little, the current academy manager, played for the club, went off and played for Darling, came back as under 13 coach, stayed around for a long time. And I always felt as though with Steve's mission statement, it would be really useful to have people who've been there, done it, got the borough badge in their hearts, and we had lots of success with that. And I always thought that their knowledge and experience of the game was invaluable, and their experience of being in that dressing room, of being on the heavy defeat, like Paul said. Those examples, those experiences of a victorious dressing room. I'm pleased to say that Tony McMahon, who was captain of the youth team when we won the FA Youth Cup, he's now part of the coaching structure at the academy, and Tony's been round the block doing that. And proud to say that Jonathan Woodgate started his apprenticeship as a coach with us. So that borough connection, I think, was very, very important. And there's still examples of that today.
You must be very proud as well in terms of the recruitment policy of local players as well, and the bringing those players in and not having to go here, there, and everywhere, because
I said I was lucky, Chris, having Steve Gibson as the chairman, but I was also very, very lucky to be put in a place where my head of recruitment was Ron Bourne. Prior to me coming to the club, Ron had fulfilled every role other than manager at the club, and wealth of experience. In the Centre of Excellence days, Ron would be known as the Youth Development Officer. But he said to me as soon as I started, I see myself as head of recruitment, and that was one of the first things I did. I announced that Ron Bourne, his new title was head of academy recruitment. Ron brought so much to the environment, not just through his eye for talent, but as a person, highly intellectual, bright, with figures, and but his sense of humour was great. He always put a smile on people's faces. But his knowledge of growth, development, maturation, his gut instinct. His favourite saying was, "He's got something. This kid has got something." You know, and he always had an opinion about coaches. I've been watching the coaching tonight at the under-13s and such and such and such, and they're all right, then, Dave. They're all right. You know, and he always that shoulder to go to and ask for advice. Ron was my go-to person. He brought so much, but his eye for talent was very, very, very good. And he was awarded. He got recognised by the Football Association for his work in recruitment and talent ID. And when asked the question, what he says, two things: potential and patience. Identify the potential, and then just be patient. And if you've got the potential bit right, the big test is your patience. And just see it through. Just stick with it. Stick with him. And if we're in, I don't know if you remember, Paul, but we used to have player audit meetings or retain release meetings, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And if ever Ron said, just be patient, or he's got something, my note paper just said retained or extend, or and I think that comes down to the trust as well. And I've had many discussions recently about talent ID, and the go-to people really are the coaches. And the world of football, they have a separate departments: the recruitment department, coaching department. But when it comes to talent ID and retain of registration and extension of contracts, it's the coach everybody goes to. And sometimes I think coming out of the FA coaching sort of program pathway, perhaps they need to slot in there more information about talent ID and what it looks like, rather than just the coaching and the coaching session, etc. Because the coaches within the program are the key talent ID people, and they're the people who are making decisions on, and have they got the experience that Ron's got, and say he's got something. Could never, maybe sometimes didn't sum it up too well, but he's got something. You know, he's got something. We just got to stick with it and see if we can maximise the potential. But there's others use some personal feelings on it.
Brilliant.
But so lucky to have Ron. So lucky.
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, just obviously, I'll go on to that in a second. Sorry. So, what has been the greatest period of time while you were there, and the successes you had? What did you enjoy the most?
I think because of what you write down on a piece of paper, Chris, is that what's the ultimate aim of the academy is to produce first-team players, and we did that. And Steve never forgot when we were in financial difficulty in his company. Him himself he had to move out to Jersey for tax purposes, etc., etc. So there was plenty of challenges, but at that time, the likes of James Morrison, who probably shouldn't have been sold but had to, and Lee Cattermole, Stuart Downing, Adam Johnson. So I don't know the figures, but we, from a financial viability point of view as an academy, we did that as well. We paid back what it was costing and more. So he had great faith in us. Yeah.
Excellent. And what are you doing with yourself these days? How do you keep busy?
Well, when I first retired, I did a year with the Premier League as a coach advisor, which was enjoyable in some respects. And it was for the head of coaching cohorts. We had about 7 or 8 cohorts, and it was nice to go to the lovely venues, etc. But I still don't believe to this day that the head of coaching is the right title. And when you sat in the cohort and listening to the various interpretations of what the head of coaching looks like, I think the Premier League needed to do some closer monitoring of how the funding was being allocated and why the funding was allocated. So anyway, I enjoyed the year and a bit I had with that. I do a lot of one-to-ones just out my own time. It's not a business or anything paid. I just get great pleasure in meeting people who ring me and say, "We have an hour." So we set up monthly meetings now. I think there's about 6 I meet now at different times and once a month. And I ask them after each meeting to make some notes about our meeting that we've had and where have you taken that the next time we meet.
Is this academy directors or
say again?
Sorry, is this academy directors or is it coaches?
Yeah, well, mainly heads of coaching.
Yeah,
mainly heads of coaching. Yeah. Yeah, that's really enjoyable, Chris, and no pressure. You can say what the hell you like, you know. No, it's and I hope the lads who do it. I really enjoy it. I really do, and I hope the lads who are involved in it enjoy it as much as I do, and I hope they get something from it. You know, certainly I do. It's nice to see how they operate and what challenges they've got, what they're going through. Before lockdown, spent a lot more time with my grandson, little Mason, and so I had a mad moment. A couple of months, January, I had a mad moment. I decided I'd have an allotment. I know nothing about gardening. Never had one in my life. Never done any gardening. But it's been a real godsend. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, see as many games as I possibly can when it's all up and running. I like going to see the under-23s, under-18s, not just from Middlesbrough, from other clubs as well.
Right.
And I always love to go and still watch the first team, and I love to see academy names on the team sheet. Yeah. And I always send Craig a nice message when we've got another one on there. Life's good. Retirement is good.
Good.
And I'm coming up 66 now, so it's been a good decision. Not just for me, for Jean and family, and I think for Middlesbrough as well. Yeah.
Paul, would you like to, before we go to any of the questions, I'm sure there's something obviously you would speak to Dave about. We've got quite a few questions as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, I'm sure you're keen to get to the questions. The only one I was going to ask Dave, the final one, other than obviously it's great to see you again, and thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. The only one I was really interested in is obviously your Stuart. Obviously, he was a top player, had a great career. But what was that like? You know, obviously him coming through the system, was it funny? Was there any sort of challenges there? Because obviously, like you say, question.
Yeah. I think what people have to realise is that Stuart was signed with Middlesbrough at 11-year-old, and then left home at under 14 to go to the national school at Lilleshall. And to get into Lilleshall, you had to be registered with a team, and you had to be registered with a football club. And Stuart was that. Keith Lamb and Steve Gibson knew that, and I said, obviously there's some delicate issues there involved, and I said, but you can have it from me that Stuart will be his own man. Never took him to work. He got the bus. Jane and myself made a conscious decision to say that he'll not travel with Dad to work, so he used to get about 3 buses to get to Herworth. Until he got his Toyota Starlet or something and started travelling up and down. He was very, very good. I've got to say, I've got to give him lots and lots of credit, because he didn't want to bring it home, and we didn't. I think I was more keen to find out what was going on than he was to tell me, and well respected by his peers. Still got friends from when he played at Middlesbrough. John Pickering needs to take a lot of credit. He had his first loan period, and that was a real enjoyable time for the family, going down to Halifax every week. Bottom of the 4th division. Paul Bracewell had took his first managerial job. Richie Barker was his assistant. Stuart played as a 17-year-old at Halifax, a middle centre-back of the back three. On the right of him was Graham Mitchell, who was the Football League monitor and head coach at Huddersfield for a time. And then on the other side was a man called Chris Wilder, who's gone on to great success at Sheffield United. And Stuart remembers that, you know, having nowhere to train, trying to find a school field somewhere, having to wash his own kit. Loved Paul Bracewell, loved what he did, loved what Richie Barker did. We had a great time watching him, and it was that got him over the line, as the saying goes, to playing against Macclesfield in the League Cup. And then from there he built on a career, but all down to himself, all down to his. And we allowed him to live. We didn't wrap him in cotton wool because he was the academy manager's son. He had a social life. His friends from school are still his friends, despite going to Lewishall. But no, all credit to him, really. Difficulties, heartache, injuries. He had a few injuries in his time, and probably that was because of his stature and his physical development. He was a July birthday, so he was late.
Yeah.
But no, it was we're so proud of what he did and what he achieved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. But it wasn't, heartache and nerves. And Jane used to love going. She used to love going to games and getting excited, and she was like a real fan.
Yeah.
And I used to get all knotted up and nervous, and yeah. I know there was a great story, and he always his debut in the Premier League was Leeds United at home, and he says we were stood in the tunnel. He said I was a bit nervous, and he said there was Gareth Southgate, Mark Schwarzer, somebody else, and then Stuart, and right at the back was Frank Quedru. And the teams lined up in the tunnel. I'll not use the words that we use, but Frank Quedru, right from the back of the queue, everybody's ready to go out. And at the time, Harry Kewell was at the top of his game and playing left wing. Stuart was playing right back. And Frank shouted right from the back, "Hey, Stu, who the hell is Harry Kewell?" Poor Stuart's like bright red, feels like disappearing somewhere. He didn't say hell. He didn't say who the hell is. But you can imagine what he did say. But he loved his time and loved everything about it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but yeah, another very proud, a lot of proud moments there. I'm just there. There's a few people who've emailed in beforehand. Jo Fry, I know she's on the. She's listening or watching in. She worked with you and just wanted to say hello.
Hiya.
Yeah, John Fry. And then Ian Bogey.
Hi, Ian.
Very good player in his day, wasn't he?
I watched Netflix the other night, and I watched Gascoigne. Yeah. If you want to see a good program about Paul Gascoigne, watch it on Netflix. It's very, very good. But there was a photograph came up of the FA Youth Cup team at that time, and a young little Ian Bogey's on the front row there, and I remember it well. Yeah, he's good. And I hope he's doing well. He's a good man. Good man.
He's asked the best player you've worked with during your Borough spell, and a player who was excellent at youth level but never quite made it as a pro.
Good questions. Good questions. I always answer with. I think you look at your programme and you look at the boys that you're dealing with. There's a young man called Jason Kennedy who Didn't go on the heights of the Premier League. He played in that famous game at Fulham when we had all the academy graduates playing. But Jason worked hard. Mum and Dad supported him as much as they could. They used to take him home every night after training. Very, very quiet lad. Very tough, good with both feet. Everything you wanted as far as a self-starter, self-motivated. Did everything you wanted from an academy player. He went on to play at Darlington. He played over 400 games for Rochdale. He went on to Carlisle. And then he's at Hartlepool at the moment. He's on loan. And he's playing at Spennymoor, where Stuart's one of the coaches now. So he's working with Jason. But everything you wanted in an academy player came through with Jason. The only thing that Jason didn't have was explosiveness. He wasn't sharp over the short distance. Could play up front, could play in midfield. Was a really important member of the Youth Cup winning team. For talent, Stewie Downing, Lee Cattermole, James Morrison. I've got to mention Adam Johnson. I know it's not done thing mentioning Adam, but he was a talent. Those are the talents, and we just had to put them on the right way. And I heard a great thing the other day from John McDermott. I heard John's lecture, I said, and he talked about Pochettino. And he said, which kids deserve to be successful. And people like Jason Kennedy, that's what I'm trying to say, deserve to be successful because of how they approach things and and it's no different in any other walk of life. If you're a coach, if you work hard, you're enthusiastic, you've got a thirst for learning, you deserve to move on and be successful. You don't have to move on to be successful. You can be successful in the club where you are. With hard work, enthusiasm. But Stewie Downing, going back to the players, Stewie Downing was a real talent from day one. Still is. James Morrison never played outside the Premier League until recently. People like Chris Brunt were talents. Andrew Davies was a talent. Tony McMahon, Andrew Taylor. Underneath it all, I think that hard work and that ethos that we had. Mark Proctor, who I haven't mentioned yet, was a real key ingredient to everything we did. And he probably used to call it the cake mix. Useless on a computer. Would have failed miserably under EPPP. Couldn't switch it on. Couldn't send an email. But as far as relationships with children and relationships with players, and knowing what was required and the hard work and toil and sweat, and obviously recognising talent, Prop was as good as anyone, and still is. Very, very clever, and he didn't know it, but he was a brilliant psychologist with the boys. Brilliant, great sense of humour. But being in that dressing room, knew what success was like as a player. Knew what failure was like as a player. Great on the training ground. Very, very good, and a top individual as a person. Strong, high moral ethics. Very, very good. I'd back Prop with anything, you know.
Brilliant. And that leads quite nicely on there, that what you just talked about from the psychology side. Barry Dawson's asked, do you think in general academy recruitment used the four-corner model as part of their policy in recruiting players?
This is Barry's the best signing I ever made, Chris. John Barry was my first head of education and welfare, who did a great job. And then John retired, and I was so lucky to get Barry. And Barry's held in such high regard across the game. And Paul's nodding his head, and he would agree. He's just a top man. And Barry's right in what he says, is that we all, as coaches, put the technical corner and the tactical corner above everything else. And Craig Simmons, who used to work at the National School, always said to me when I first started the job, he always used to say, David, he says, when you start, he says, concentrate on the social corner. Get the social corner right first. Make sure the kids are good kids, they know what to expect. High standards, etc., etc. Education's first and foremost, and you'll not go far wrong. And he's right. Do we learn our lessons? Not in all cases. There are some cases that Barry would quote here that where the social corner and the psychological corner have been ignored for the sake of the talent. Mm. And I suppose it goes back to what Pochettino said. Those kids who didn't have that right approach, didn't have that right social outlook, really don't deserve to that success. The ones that have that have gone on to great success. Ben Gibson's is as good of example as you can think of as being self-driven. He created himself then, but behind that was real good psychology with his mum and his dad, great family network. Some kids need more support than others, we all know that. But Ben was a real self-starter, self-driven. Organised all his first 3 loans by himself. And I think what Barry's coming to is the recruitment department and the coaching department are sometimes in fear of losing talent and not giving it a chance. And therefore the emphasis to this technical corner comes back into play. We'll go with the technical, hoping, which very rarely happens, is that we can work on the psychology and we can work on the social. And really, you in hindsight, you should really make sure that those 2 corners are in place before it all starts, or you make adjustments before that next stage of the journey starts. But the answer to Barry's question is probably no, we probably don't have it in balance. Perhaps the social corner needs to be a big block. Next size block should be the psychology, and then evenly spread and not so big as the other 2 are the physical and the technical. But because of talent ID and coaching mentality, we'll go with the talent, and that always, whether that'll ever change, I'm not sure. And I suppose it makes you think when Pochettino's think, well, do they deserve to be successful? And I think it's a good line for coaches. Yeah. When they're trying to instill good habits, hard work, the toil and strife they have to go through. Well, if you want to get to that end of the rainbow, then this is what it's going to take. And some people listen, like Ben Gibson. Other people don't, and I can name many. I'm not going to mention any, but there's many who don't listen and think that their natural talent will get them there. And because of who they are and their backgrounds and their lack of support, they don't get there. So I hope I've answered your question, Barry.
That's a great answer, to be fair. I'm going to push together 2 questions. Michael Brady and Mohammed Chowdhury, regular loggers in. They've both thought, well, Michael's, what's the biggest change in coaching you've seen throughout your career? And Mohammed's put, with EPPP introduced in 2012, subsequent changes since, what do you think is the next big change coming, and when? Kind of merge that together.
Yeah. If I can just go to the second part first, is that I think with Jed Roddy moving and Neil Saunders and Mark Cannon taking the reins as far as the youth department are concerned, I think there's a review being continually being reviewed now, and obviously the audit process is changing. And I think, am I right in saying, Paul, that the lockdown interrupted sort of the process in the national process in terms of audit?
I believe so. Yeah, the next round was imminent. Yeah.
So I think what they've done with the audit is to find out what the game wants and what the clubs want. Jed's intention was to shock the system, and he certainly did that. And as I said, there's lots and lots of good things come out of the EPPP. I think the next stage is to review, which I think which is ongoing as we speak, to review what we've achieved under EPPP and how can we take it to the next level. I think we've started the process with multidisciplinary meetings, individual learning plans, etc., as things that came out, and I think they can be a real strong tools for coaches. In terms of coaching, I was, again, going back to how lucky I've been. My mentors, my coach educators were Les Reed, Dick Bate, Martin Hunter, Craig Simmons, Keith Blunt, John Peacock. Just fantastic coach educators. I mean, sadly Dick's no longer with us. Probably as good a coach educator in the world as you ever wish to meet. Brilliant, and that continuity, that caliber of person, and I don't mean anything in disrespect to anybody that's in those posts now, but they were just outstanding coach educators. Teaching and the teaching of the game is one thing I've seen. Is that I've had many discussions with, even before I just left, part-time coaches saying I do all my coaching through small-sided games. And I said, well, when do you teach then? When do you show kids how it actually applies? And again, I've got this thing about coach. I firmly believe that coaches should have some affinity with that dressing room. That, I'm not saying being a professional and living all that, but play the game at a reasonable level to understand how things apply and have an emotional contact with the game, with the dressing room. What's it feel like in a winning dressing room? What's it feel like in a 10-0 defeat at Man City? What's that feel like? How do you support kids in those situations? And I always used to say to Paul and the rest of the lads is the coaching, there's no definitive answer as to, and I think the word is balance. You've got to have a balance of technical practice, skill practice, small-sided games, phases of play. And I think if we're all honest, I mean, the 11v11 situation that we're all judged on as coaches through the process, and can you conduct an 11v11 coaching situation? When in reality, when you step into the academy program, when do you ever get a chance to coach in an 11v11 situation? Very, very rarely. We moved from technical guidelines, which we thought covered most of the bases, into a curriculum that are based on the technical guidelines, so that we didn't change a lot. Because when we first got audited, it's unbelievable, the environment there, fantastic, but your technical guidelines isn't what we would consider a curriculum, a syllabus. So I tried it, which I did. I translated the technical guidelines we had into a syllabus of work. And the changes, the PMA, which was really welcomed by all coaches that were in the process and still is. So you get the saying that, oh, coaches spending too much time on computers and not enough time on the field. I think where I am at the moment, that's part of the process now. It's part of the modern world. So that ability to use technology and use video analysis, use sports science, are the biggest changes for me. And if those guys I meet when I mentor, I just watch Liverpool, Leeds. Leeds are fascinating. Just the physical output of the players and the speed in which the ball moves and the speed in which the players move, their physical conditioning. The coach, all the way through the programme, I would say from 12-year-old, has to be working hand in hand with the physical developers, and you've got to speak the same language, find out what works. I was talking to Mark Tinkler last night about being tough and being tough on talent, and probably just an observation, we're probably not tough enough with the talents that we deal with as coaches, as sports scientists, as psychologists, as educationists. Again, probably in fear of losing the talent. But did it deserve to be successful in Pochettino's words? I'm not sure. I hope that answers the questions. I hope that, I've tried to answer both of those there.
Yeah.
I've heard some of Tinks' team talk. He's definitely tough.
Yeah. Ian Skinner, who's I think he's up your way. Ian came out and delivered a coaching course out in Dubai, actually, for the FA. I hope you well, Ian. He's put Dave's thoughts on the Premier League going to regulate pre-academy age groups, subject to a vote for next season.
Scrap it.
Yeah.
My first letter to the Premier League when I took the job in 1998 was just about what I've just said. I still believe to this day that academies, teams and groups shouldn't start until 12. It's interesting, I got a text sent the other day from a friend of mine about Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich have scrapped under 9s, 10s, 11s, I think. And my first letter to the Premier League suggested that. And we were all sat in a circle, League of Nations, with your name and your club. And I had to stand up and make my case for not operating 9s. Because at the time, 1998, the only experience football had with centres of excellence was 14s. If you remember, it was under 14s. It was under 14s, 15s, 16s. No one had any experience. No one had any knowledge about under 8s up to under 11s. Nobody had dealt with them. Nobody had worked with them. Craig Simmons was the FA man, the go-to man, and he set up a study group to look at under 8s up to under 11s. I remember Paul McGuinness sitting on the panel. Didn't get any further forward. And that meeting, I sort of defended my letter or made a case for it. Everybody agreed. But nothing happened. So we continued to work with 9s up to 11s. I get the principle is that we've got this massive base that under 9s, under 8s, 7s, whatever we've got now, and it narrows down and you eventually end up with first team players. In reality, the games program dictates otherwise. You have this massive base of development centres. And then you come into the under 9s registrations, and like Middlesbrough, because of the size of us and what we were about, we only had one team. So we only had, at the most, 12 registered under 9s. Having all these development centres and getting a place for 12. So you got your 9s and your 10s and 11s going as that, and then under 12s it branched out. It looked like a Christmas tree. But I still don't believe kids are ready. And I did the Advanced Youth Award last year, and I did some work before. And the kid, if he's in the system from under 9s to under 23s, do many people survive that journey? I'm not sure, but that's a 15-year development program, and that is so difficult. Trying to avoid institutionalization and all that, and they come in at 9s, 10s, 11s, and 12s. They run out of the cars, they run into the building, they can't get the balls out quick enough. By the time the scholars come in the minivan, they've had 14 years of it, and they trudge off the minibus with the tracksuits on and the toilet bags under their arms. There's great books called from Sir Ken Robinson, you'll have probably mentioned before. One's called The Element, and one's called How to Find Your Element. And I'd recommend it to all the coaches. Because I used to challenge the kids, are you in your element? And what the hell are you talking about, Dave? I said, well, when you were 9 and 10, I think you were in your element. You were in your element, just coming here 3 nights a week, doing your work. You couldn't wait to get here. By the time you're scholar, are you really in your element? Are you still in love with what you're doing? And are you still in love with the game? And you get a real buzz about coming into work? I'm not too sure. Stuart Downing just loved the game of footy. And he was in his element on a football pitch or a training field. I can't remember Stuart missing a training session. Ben Gibson would do anything to make himself better. If I said, run through that wall, Ben, and you'll be a better player, he'd start tunneling. He'd start trying to get through the wall. And how many people lose that sense, that love of what you're doing? And it's no different for the coaches. Are you in your element coaching? Do you really get that spiritual feeling and sense of enjoyment and fulfillment from it? Those who do will be probably go on and be the most successful in that particular area in which you're working, or go on to greater and better things. A thirst for learning is as well for coaches. Have you got that thirst to go on and be better? Are you prepared to go that extra mile to go and see someone work, or go abroad to see a different culture, etc., etc.? I'm not sure what the question was now.
It actually covers the Murray Jones has asked, Dave, what are the key points for an aspiring academy manager? And I think you've probably answered that there, haven't you, in part of it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different job now. It's management in the true sense of the word is that you've got just the numbers that you're dealing with, staff. You've got to have a strong academy management team. You're strong-headed, not strong's the wrong word, but really good people who firmly believe in what you're doing and will disseminate all that to his staff, to their staff. And find out, if you're an academy manager, I would strongly recommend find out somehow how your first team management operates. Not to say that you argue, I don't think that's the case about arguing a corner for kids. Kids will find their own way. The kids will knock the door down just on their performance. And if it's not that club, they'll find another. The real talents will find a way through. But managing upwards is very, very important. I think all those things we talked about, support from above, make sure you've got that. If you look into going into academy management, you've got to create that environment where communication is good at all levels of the club, and be prepared to be the leader in that communication. And then another thing is just be seen. I think I was seen. I think I knew every kid from under 9s all the way through. The coaches knew they weren't under any pressure when I stepped out onto the coaching field and to watch the session. But the kids knew who I was. The parents knew who I was. Just be seen around the building. Don't be someone who sits in the office. Heads of coaching, I firmly believe heads of coaching should be the same. Heads of coaching, I believe, is an on the field job. It's not an office job. It's on the field, working with coaches, encouraging coaches, helping coaches, giving ideas to coaches, coaching competency frameworks was a thing that was brought in with EPPP as well. Seems to have died a death a little bit, but if each coach had a development action plan, how to improve their knowledge, how to gain more knowledge, etc., for the more experienced coach, and then create and sort of build them into a Middlesbrough ethos and a Middlesbrough type of coach. I've said that about good recruitment. Make sure your talent ID. If you're an academy manager, you're responsible for the head of recruitment. I'll tell you a story about head of recruitment. My last ever academy management meeting was at Chester Racecourse. And if at the time the Premier League had offered an amnesty to all clubs about their misdemeanours in the recruitment world. So those who hadn't acted properly in the recruitment of players, for want of a better term, were given the chance to come forward, own up, hold their hands up, put the cards on the table, and we'd start from scratch. And that would be it. At that meeting, last on the agenda was a legal meeting. Legal guys from the Premier League were going to speak. There were 34 ongoing cases that the Premier League were investigating at the time. This guy spoke, and I couldn't believe some of the questions that were asked. But anyway, so one or two had got their fingers burnt, and one or two clubs were in the dock, as it were. So I put my hand up. I could feel my blood sort of rising as the guy was speaking, and I just put my hand up and said, surely the answer to all this is in the room. We're all sitting around here as academy managers, and we are responsible for the actions of our staff. So if you are acting improperly in the recruitment of young players and young people, the responsibility sits in this room. And he says, I couldn't agree more, Dave. And there was a deathly silence. And Neil Saunders actually stood up and said, I think we'll close the meeting there. And I got one or two pats on the back for saying it, but other people, one or two in the room, thought otherwise. But on that, you are responsible for your recruitment and your behaviour of your recruitment. And your head of coaching, your head of recruitment is so critical. It was the only mandatory, only position we had that wasn't mandatory in the Premier League rules. Can you believe that? And all the issues and the bad reputation that people get is through the recruitment departments and the recruitment of players. And yet, I wrote a letter after that meeting, and I'm saying that heads of education meet on a monthly basis. Heads of coaching meet. The coaches go to meetings. The sports science go to gatherings nationally, etc. Medical people go to gatherings. The only people who never sit round the table at that particular time in 2017 when I said it were the heads of academy recruitment. I called them whores. Anyway, that was. I did get a reply and said perhaps we shouldn't call them that. But we are responsible as academy management to set the standards. And over in my period, I was tested to say, well, we should do this and we should do that. And I said, no, we're not doing that. We are not doing that. That's not right. And then the greatest example I can give you was Steve Highway from Liverpool at the time. Steve was academy manager when I first started. Steve always used to speak about the ethics and the morals of the game. Our first ever academy management dinner in 1998 was at Loughborough University. And Graham Taylor, God bless him, was the guest of honour. And he stood up and he said, this is fantastic, this Charter for Quality. I've read the document, it's absolutely fantastic. And he says, you 38 academy managers have been given a great responsibility. And it will be fantastic until one of you cheats. And he was dead right. And he's dead. It's still to this day, because we can all sit round. And again, I'm going back to the question of things you need. Good recruitment, make sure you're responsible for your recruitment behaviours and you're doing things by the book. It's a lot tighter now because of the Premier League stance on it. But that's one thing. And then good coaching, which we've mentioned. Good environment, good process. The kids feel safe, the parents feel welcome, the staff feel valued. Credibility, which I mentioned. You've got, if you haven't got that credibility, I mentioned the 6-1 win against Manchester United, FA Youth Cup win in 2004, 2006, 11 academy players playing at Fulham. That all gives you good credibility. Actually, these people are producing good players. The representation at national level, I've never mentioned. I had a great affinity with people playing for England and other nations. That gives you credibility as well. If you're credible, that will give you lots and lots of confidence. Confidence to say to the likes of Paul, go and do what you think is right, and as long as you're within these guidelines, put your own stamp on it, put your own style on it. That gives you, and then that confidence gives you the ability to give continuity to it all. And the length of service of your staff is also. I mean, I'll put a picture up on the Advanced Youth Award where Wendy'd been there 22 years, Ron had been there 25 years, Barry had been there 10 years, Craig Little had been there a while, Peter Hood's been there forever, etc., etc. So people enjoying what they're doing, continuity. Ron said potential and patience. Well, I think within that you've got to have continuity of staff. It shouldn't be a youth development program. Shouldn't be changing for changing's sake. And on top of all that, you've got to have good fortune. You've got to have good fortune that one or two things fall into place when probably you're not expecting it. So that game at Fulham, I always tell the story that was that managed. Was that a part of the plan? No, it wasn't. It was because the first team had been successful. First team got to the final of the UEFA Cup. Steve McLaren was able to say to everybody, including the press, they say, well, our first team are not going to play for them. The kids are going to play. So I remember getting in the car and scampering down to London to see it. And that was good fortune, Stuart Downing's story is a bit of good fortune. He went on loan to Sunderland. I don't think he was in Steve McLaren's plans. But he went to Sunderland, and Mick McCarthy had great faith in him. Mainly through his head of recruitment, Dave Bowman, who promoted the concept of Stewie Downing to Mick McCarthy. And Mick McCarthy gave him the exposure he needed. And Stuart was fantastic at Sunderland. And he was recalled. He was recalled by Steve McLaren and never looked back. And that was the start of his journey. So that good fortune goes along with that credibility, confidence, continuity, and that ability to manage upwards. Find out how they make sure you protect the academy staff. Speak on behalf of the academy staff, not yourself. Be as open as you possibly can be, because there's certain delicate issues at technical board level that you've got to keep behind closed doors, etc. Be discreet, be open. I always used to have my door open. We'll put a wedge under it, and people would walk past. Morning, Dave. Morning, Dave. And they just come in. Have you got 5 minutes? And they used to come in and leave the door open. If they left the door open, I knew it was okay, and we were going to have a good chat about footy or something. If they come in and knock the wedge out the door and shut the door, we knew it was a bit more delicate. All those things. But I think being seen is really key. Don't sit around so you're not seen. Make sure everybody knows who you are, and respect everybody from whatever role they play. So anyway, I hope that's some good points.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you, Dave. There's quite a few other questions, but we've gone on a long time, and I think that those questions could be answered anyway. I mean, if people want to email them in, and maybe I could ask Dave if it's possible to ask.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Thank you, appreciate that. I mean, it's been absolutely fantastic listening. To be honest, I could listen to you all night, but I don't think your wife will be too happy.
Hey, it's the opposite, Chris. She's very, very happy.
I mean, from my side, I'll let Paul close it out, but been brilliant having you on. I mean, I've got a huge amount from it. I know everyone on there will have, and there's a lot of people on there that have obviously worked with you and know you very well. So thank you for everyone joining us. We've got Jamie Morley on Saturday, talking about his the people that you're not too fond of, actually, Dave, the agent.
No, I wouldn't say that. I think we had a chat last night about agents, and I think I would take a different approach. I said that last night.
Yeah.
I think going through what I went through in 19 years, 20 years, is I became very protective of the families and the kids. And it's not I didn't like the people. I didn't like what they stood for. And some of their behaviours were appalling. And when they were appalling, I took action. And they didn't appreciate that. But no, I think I take a different approach now. I think agents are part of the whole setup now, and I probably, if I take up a academy manager's job tomorrow, I'd probably have to think of strategies to include them at 16, 17, etc. So yeah, I think it's a bit of me learning from my past experiences.
Right, yeah, and I mean, following that, we've got Teddy Sheringham next Wednesday, just to talk about the managers that he's played under. We talked about Venables earlier. I mean, he played, Clough and Ferguson, but Venables was a more of a coach, from what I gather for the people that have played under him and know him well. So it'd be interesting to hear about that, and his his spell as a manager or a coach. But yeah, thank you so much, Dave. I'll let Paul just obviously say his thanks, and then I'll email you anyway. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you as well, Chris, for letting me be part of it. Dave, it's fantastic seeing you again. Like you say, I think it goes without saying, I think that everyone has got so much out of that, and good luck with your allotment. Great to see you again, Dave. Anyway, thank you very much.
Great to see you, Brian. Thanks ever so much, everyone, and I hope you found it useful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.